Hi everyone, so in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to crochet these cute little dungarees. So they have these little buttons on the top of the front and then the little shorts at the bottom, but these could be made to any length. So these dungarees can be made in a number of different sizes, and for all of the information on how to make the different sizes, please see the description box below. So thank you very much for watching, and please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. To begin your romper, you want to start off by making a slip knot. So to do a slip knot, take your yarn and take your finger and wrap the yarn around your finger once and then twice. Then take the first loop and pull it over the second loop, and then take the second loop and pull it all the way over your finger. You then want to take your crochet hook, go in through this space and pull tight, and there we have a slip knot. And now once you have your slip knot, we are now going to make our foundation chain, and we are going to chain 110. So chain 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 110. So there I have finished making my foundation chain, and now before we can move on to round 1, we need to turn our foundation chain that we have here into a foundation ring. So to do that, you want to slowly go along your foundation chain, so go all the way down to the very bottom, down to the first chain that you worked, and you want to go down it slowly to make sure that there are no twists in your chain. And then when you get down to the very first chain that you worked, you want to insert your hook into this chain and then take your yarn and yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. So work a slip stitch into the first chain of the foundation chain, and there we have turned our foundation chain into a foundation ring. And now before we move on to round 1, you just want to quickly go back and double check that there are no twists in your chain, and if there are not, we can move on to the first round. So to begin round 1, you want to chain 1, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So now round 1 is just a simple round of double crochet. So we're just going to do 1 double crochet into every single chain. So yarn over and go down into this first chain here that our chain 1 comes out of, and work 1 double crochet, and then yarn over and go down into the next chain and do 1 double crochet into this one, and then yarn over and go down into the next chain and do a double crochet into this one as well. So to do a double crochet, you yarn over, go down into the chain, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through the final 2 loops on your hook. So there we have 1 double crochet into that chain as well, and you just want to continue working this all the way around for round 1, 1 double crochet into every single chain. So I have finished working that all the way around for round 1, and at the end of that round you should have 110 double crochets, and I would recommend that you go back and double check that you do have 110, as it can be quite easy to work 1 not enough or 1 too many as we're working into these little chains. So go back and double check that you have the right number, and if you do, we want to finish off this round by going down into the first double crochet here, go into this stitch and work a slip stitch. So yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. And there we have finished round 1, and we're ready to move on to round 2. So to begin round 2, you want to chain 1 and turn, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So now round 2 is just another round of plain double crochet. So we're just going to do 1 double crochet into every single stitch. So yarn over and go down into the very first stitch here and do 1 double crochet, and then do 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and just keep working that all the way around, 1 double crochet into each and every stitch. Okay, so I have finished working that all the way around, so I have come to the end of round 2, and then to finish off this round you want to do a slip stitch into the first double crochet that you worked, and at the end of that round you should still have 110 double crochets. And now we can move on to round 3. So to begin this round you want to chain 1 and turn, and round 3 is the exact same thing as round 2. We're just going to do 1 double crochet into every single stitch, so just repeat round 2. So I have finished working that all the way around for round 3, so I have come to the end of that round, and now we're going to do the same thing as usual. We're going to finish off by working a slip stitch into the first double crochet of the round, and you should have 110 double crochets in that round as well. So there we have finished rounds 1, 2 and 3, and now we can move on to round 4. So to begin round 4 you want to chain 1 and turn, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So to start this round we are going to do 9 double crochets, or 1 double crochet into each of the first 9 stitches. So yarn over and go down into the first one and do 1 double crochet, then do 1 into the second one along, and the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and then finally the 9th. So there we have 9 double crochets, and now we're going to go down into this next stitch and work 2 double crochets into this next one. So yarn over and go down into the next stitch and do 1 double crochet, and then do a second one down into the same stitch, like that. And we're going to keep repeating that all the way around for round 4. You want to do 9 double crochets, then 2 into the next, then 9 double crochets and 2 into the next, all the way around. So I'm just coming to the end of round 4, so I have worked that all the way around, and I have one last stitch to work into, and I should work 2 double crochets into this last stitch. So I have done 1 double crochet into 9 stitches, so then I should do 2 double crochets into this last one at the end. But we are not going to do 2 double crochets into this last one. We're going to finish up by just doing 1 double crochet into this last stitch at the very end. So yarn over, go down into this last stitch and do 1 double crochet. So for your last repeat of that set of stitches, instead of doing 1 double crochet into 9 stitches and then 2 into the last one here, you just want to do 1 double crochet into each of the last 10 stitches. And at the end of that round you should have 120 double crochets, and it's really important that you do have 120. So you want to go back and double check that you do have that number, and if you do, we can work a slip stitch into the first double crochet that we worked. And there we have finished round 4, and we're ready to move on to round 5. So we are now on to round 5, and for the next part of our romper we are just going to keep working rounds of plain double crochet until you get to the end of round 21. So that should be 17 rounds in total. So for rounds 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up to the end of round 21, you just want to keep working rounds of plain double crochet. So just as we did up here at the start for rounds 2 and 3, you just want to chain 1 and turn, and that chain 1 never counts as a stitch, and then do 1 double crochet into every single stitch. So we'll do 1 double crochet down into this first stitch here, and then 1 into the next, and keep doing that all the way around, and then when you get to the end, work a slip stitch into the first double crochet that you worked. So you want to do that all the way around for round 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, up to the end of round 21, and in each round you should have 120 double crochets. And then once you have done that, this is what you should have. So I have already done all of those rounds. So we have round 5 up here, and all of these are just rounds of plain double crochet. And then when I got to the end of round 21, I double checked that I still had 120 stitches in that last round, and I do. And now we can move on to separating our romper with the little legs, the little shorts. And I just quickly wanted to mention that if you wanted a longer romper, then you could add additional rounds of plain double crochet. So you could add 1 or 2 or 3 extra rounds if you want the romper to be a little bit longer. So now we can move on to round 1 of the bottom. So to begin round 1, you want to chain 1 and turn, as I have already done, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So the bottom of our romper is going to be separated into the 2 legs. So we're going to do this first leg first, and then we're going to move on to the second leg. So we are moving on to round 1 of the first leg. So you want to chain 1 and turn to begin this round, as I have already done, and as usual that does not count as a stitch. And we're going to start off by doing 60 double crochets, and we should have 120 at the end of round 21. So we're going to do 60 to take us halfway round. So yarn over, go down into the first stitch here and do 1, and then do 1 into the next, and keep going until you have 60. So I have finished working those 60 double crochets, and that has taken me halfway around. And now to finish off round 1 of this leg, we're going to work a slip stitch into the first double crochet of the round. So we have finished off here halfway along the front here, and we're going to go across to the back where we started and go down into this stitch. So you need to go down into the first stitch that you worked and pull your yarn tight and work a slip stitch like that. And there we have created our first leg. So this is what the leg should look like. So we have started to create our first leg, and now we can move on to round 2. So round 2 is just a simple round of double crochet. So we're just going to do 1 double crochet into every single stitch. So you want to chain 1 and turn, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And then we're going to do 1 double crochet into this first stitch here, and then 1 into the next stitch, and just keep doing that all the way around, and you should find that you work 60 double crochets in this round. So I have finished working that all the way around for round 2 of the leg. So I did 60 double crochets, and then I finished off by working a slip stitch into the first double crochet of the round. And now we can move on to round 3. So round 3 is just the exact same thing. You want to do another round of plain double crochet. So chain 1 and turn, and then do 1 double crochet into each stitch, and finish off with a slip stitch into the first one. And you should find that you have 60 in round 3 as well. So there I have finished round 3, and now we can move on to round 4. And in round 4 we are going to start decreasing for our legs. So we're going to start making this part a little bit smaller. So if you wanted longer legs before you start to decrease, then you can just work a few more repeats of round 2 and 3. So just plain rounds of double crochet. So you could do 1 or 2 or 3 more rounds before we start round 4 and we start to decrease. But I like it just with these first 3 rounds here of plain double crochet before they start to decrease. So it's just like little tiny shorts. So now to begin round 4, you want to chain 1 and turn, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And we are going to do 8 double crochets. So we're starting off by working 1 double crochet into each of the first 8 stitches. So like that. So there we have 8 double crochets to start. And now over these next 2 stitches, we are going to work a stitch called 2 double crochets together. So when we do 2 double crochets together, we are working 2 double crochets, 1 into each stitch, but we are not going to complete either of them, and then we're going to complete them both together at the same time. So we're effectively turning 2 stitches into 1. So you want to yarn over and go down into the first stitch here and start to work a double crochet, but you want to stop here right before the last step. So usually we would yarn over and pull through these 2 loops, but we're not going to do that. You want to stop here and move on to the next one. So yarn over, go down into the next stitch and start to work a second double crochet, and you do not want to complete that one either. So there we have 2 incomplete double crochets, and you should have 3 loops on your hook, and you want to yarn over and pull through all 3. And there we have done 2 double crochets together. And you just want to keep repeating that all the way around for round 4. We're going to do 1 double crochet into each of the next 8 stitches, then 2 double crochets together over the next 2 stitches, and then do that again, 8 more double crochets, then 2 double crochets together, and just keep repeating that all the way around. So I'm going to work 8 double crochets. And then I'm going to do 2 double crochets together over these next 2 stitches. And just keep repeating that. So there I have finished working that all the way around for round 4. So I did 2 double crochets together over the last 2 stitches, and then I worked a slip stitch into the first double crochet of the round, and there we have finished that round. So we have started to decrease, and now we can move on to round 5. So to begin this round, you want to chain 1 and turn, and as usual, this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So this round follows the same pattern as last round, so it's very similar, but in this round, instead of doing 8 double crochets and then 2 double crochets together over the next 2 stitches, we're going to do 7 double crochets and then 2 double crochets together over the next 2. So work 7 double crochets, 1 into each stitch to start. So like that, and then work 2 double crochets together over these next 2. and just keep repeating that all the way around. 7 double crochets, then 2 double crochets together, 7 double crochets, 1 into each stitch, and then 2 double crochets together all the way around. So there I have finished working that all the way around, and I finished off by working a slip stitch into the first double crochet. So there we have finished round 5 of this first leg. So we have done rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now we can move on to round 6, which is the final round. So in round 6, we're just going to do 1 half double crochet into every single stitch around the bottom of this leg, but we're just going to be working into the front loop of each stitch. So here we have our very first stitch here, and if you look at each stitch, we have a front loop and a back loop, and usually when we work into the stitch we go through both of these loops, but in this round and this round only, we're just going to be working into the front loop of each stitch. So we'll just go into the front loop of this one and then the front loop of this one here. So we're just doing 1 half double crochet into the front loop of each one. So yarn over and go down into this first stitch, but just go into the front loop and yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, and then you want to do 1 half double crochet into the front loop of the next stitch, and do the same thing into the next and the next, and just keep repeating this all the way around, and this is going to give us a nice little border with a ridge at the bottom. So I finished working that all the way around for that round, and then when I got to the end I worked a slip stitch into the first half double crochet that we worked, and there we have finished our very first leg. So that little round at the end gives us this really nice little ridged finished border here, and now we can fasten off. So you want to pull your yarn out and your hook and cut your yarn, leaving a long tail to weave in or work over later. And there we have finished our first leg, and we're ready to move on to the next one over here. So you want to start off by turning your work over to the back. So you want to have this last round facing you, but the back with the seam. And you want to attach your yarn into any of these stitches close to the center here. So you can pick any stitch which is close to the center. So I'm going to go with this one here. Insert your hook into that stitch, take your yarn, place it over the end of your hook and pull it through, and then chain 1 to secure it. And there we have attached our yarn into that stitch. And I just quickly wanted to mention, you need to make sure that this last round, so the last round of the body here, that you have the wrong side facing you. So here we have the wrong side of this last round, and that is the side that should be facing you, that you are working into. And now we're going to do, so we have attached our yarn into that stitch close to the center, and now you want to do 1 double crochet into each stitch until you reach the last stitch that hasn't been worked into in the center here. Okay, so there I have done 1 double crochet into that last stitch that hasn't been worked into there. So the next stitch, we have a stitch into that stitch for the other leg there. So I have done 1 double crochet into this last empty one. And now we are going to turn our work over to the front, and we are going to go into the first stitch which hasn't been worked into on this side. So you can see we have a stitch into this one, and we're going to go into this next one which hasn't been worked into. So yarn over and go into this stitch and work 1 double crochet, and try to make this one nice and neat and tight. And then you just want to keep working double crochets all the way around, 1 into each stitch. And you should find that that is 60 double crochets in this round, the same as round 1 for our other leg. So I have finished working that all the way around for round 1 of this second leg, and at the end of that round, like I said, you should have 60 double crochets, and it's really important that you go back and double check, as it can be really easy to not work enough stitches with this part here where you go from one side to the other. So just go back and double check that you do have 60, and if you do, we can work a slip stitch into the first double crochet that we worked. Like that. And now the rest of this leg is the exact same as the other leg. So for rounds 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, you just want to do the exact same thing as the other leg. So you can go back in the tutorial and re-watch those rounds as many times as you need to, or if you have the written pattern, it'll all be written down on there for you. But you just want to go back and do rounds 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, the exact same as this leg for this leg over here. So rounds 2 and 3 are just plain double crochet rounds, rounds 4 and 5 are our decrease rounds, and then round 6 is our last little round of half double crochet in the front loop. So keep working those rounds. I have gone ahead and made the other leg of my romper, so here I have both of the legs, and now we can move on to the top section. So our top section has a front and a back, and we're going to start off by making the front first. So you want to start off by laying your work flat with the front facing you, so the side with the seam is the back, so we have the front facing us and we have our work laid out nice and flat, and you need to make sure that the wrong side of the first round is facing you. So here you can see we have the wrong side of this very first round that we worked, round 1 of the body, that we have the wrong side of that round facing us, and we want to count in 4 stitches from the far right hand side. So if you go to the far right hand side here and count in 1, 2, 3 and 4, you want to insert your hook into that stitch. So insert your hook into the 4th stitch from the far right hand side, and we are going to attach our yarn into this stitch. So just as we did before, take your yarn, place it over the end of your hook, pull it through and then chain 1 like that. And now we can move on to round 1 of the top of the front. So we are going to start off by working 2 double crochets together over the first 2 stitches. So just as we did with the legs, you want to yarn over and go down into the first stitch that we just attached our yarn into and start to work a double crochet. Then yarn over, go down into the next stitch and start to work a double crochet into this one, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So there we have done 2 double crochets together over the first 2 stitches, and now you want to do 1 double crochet into each of the next 45 stitches. So we're doing 45 double crochets. So we're going to do 1 into this next stitch here, and 1 into the next, and keep going until you have 45. So there I have worked those 45 double crochets, and now to finish off round 1, we are going to work 2 double crochets together over these next 2 stitches. So yarn over, go down into the next stitch and start to work a double crochet, then start to work another one into the next stitch, and then pull through all 3 loops. So there we have done 2 double crochets together to finish off round 1, and there we have finished off round 1 of the top of the front, and we're ready to move on to round 2. So to begin round 2, you want to chain 1 and turn, and as usual this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So we are going to start off by working 2 double crochets together over the first 2 stitches. So work 2 double crochets together over the very first 2 stitches. And now you want to do 1 double crochet into each stitch until 2 stitches from the end, and you should find that that is 43. So work 1 double crochet into each of the next 43 stitches. So like that. So there I have done those double crochets, and you should find that you have 2 stitches left at the end which we have not worked into, and we're going to finish off by working 2 double crochets together over these last 2 stitches. Like that. And now we can move on to round 3. So to begin round 3, you want to chain 1 and turn, and this round is pretty much the same thing as the last 2 rounds, but we're going to do 2 double crochets together over the first 2 stitches, and then 1 double crochet into each of the next 41 stitches, and then 2 double crochets together over the last 2 stitches. So it's just the number of stitches in the middle which is different. So in the first round we did 45, in the second round we did 43, and in this round we're going to do 41 double crochets in the middle. So do 2 double crochets together, then do 41 double crochets and finish off with 2 double crochets together. So there I have finished round 3, and at the end of that round you should have 43 stitches in total, so the 41 with 1 either side. And now we can move on to round 4. So round 4 is just a simple round of double crochet. So we're just going to do 1 double crochet into each stitch. So to begin you want to chain 1 and turn, and as usual this doesn't count as a stitch. And now we're going to do 1 double crochet into the first stitch and 1 into the next, and keep going until you get to the end, and you should find that that is 43 double crochets. So I finished working that all the way along for round 4, so I did 1 double crochet into each stitch, and then I went ahead and repeated that round 2 more times. So rounds 4, 5 and 6 are just plain rounds of 1 double crochet into every single stitch. So that's 3 rounds, and you should find that there is 43 double crochets in each round. So here I have come to the end of round 6, and if you wanted the top of your romper to be longer, so if you're making a bigger size and you want it to be longer, then this is where you would want to go ahead and add 1 or 2 extra rounds of just plain double crochet, as in the next round we're going to be adding in our first buttonhole. So if you wanted more rounds before you have your buttonhole, then just add 1 or 2 or 3 extra rounds, but I think this size is perfect. I have done 3 rounds of plain double crochet. So there we have come to the end of round 6, and we can move on to round 7. So we are now on to round 7 of the top of the front, and in this round we are going to be adding in our buttonholes. So you want to start off by chaining 1 and turning, and as usual this doesn't count as a stitch, and we're going to start off by doing 3 double crochets, or 1 double crochet into each of the first 3 stitches, like that, and then you want to chain 1 and skip the next stitch, and that chain 1 and skip 1 is going to form our first buttonhole. And now we're going to do 1 double crochet into each of the next 35 stitches. So we have done 3 double crochets, chain 1, skip 1, then do 1 into the next, and 1 into the next, and keep going until you have 35. So there we have those 35 double crochets, and now we're going to make our buttonhole on the opposite side. So chain 1 and skip 1, and now finish off by working 3 last double crochets. So like that. So there we have finished round 7, and we can now move on to round 8. So for the next 2 rounds of our romper, we are just going to repeat the last 2 rounds that we just did. So round 6 and round 7. So the next round is just going to be a repeat of round 6. So that is 1 double crochet into each stitch. So you want to chain 1 and turn and do 1 double crochet into each stitch. And when you reach your buttonholes, you just want to go down into the chain 1 space and work a double crochet. Don't try going down into those actual little chain 1 stitches, they're really tricky to get into. So just go down into the actual chain 1 space. So the next round is just a repeat of round 6, which is 1 double crochet into each stitch, and then the next round is a repeat of round 7, the round that we just did with our buttonholes. So you'll chain 1 and turn, do 3 double crochets, chain 1, skip 1, 35 double crochets, chain 1, skip 1, 3 double crochets. So repeat round 6 and round 7, and of course you can go back in the video and re-watch those rounds if you need to, or if you have the written pattern, it's all on there. So I have finished working those 2 rounds, so I just repeated round 6 and 7, and there we have finished the majority of the top of the front. We just have one more row to go, one more round to go, and that is our border round. So you should have 2 buttonholes on each side. And now we can move on to our very last round, which is round 10, which is our border round. So you want to start off by chaining 1 and turning, and we're going to do the exact same thing as we did for the bottom of each leg. We're going to do 1/2 double crochet into the front loop of each stitch along. So yarn over, go down into this first stitch here and just go into the front loop and do 1/2 double crochet. Then do 1 into the 1/2 double crochet of the next stitch, and try to make this nice and neat. So try to have good tight tension with your stitches, and that will make it look a little bit neater at the top, as this is the front. And now do 1 into the next stitch, and then when you get to your chain here, just want to go into the front loop of that chain. So this can be a little bit tricky as those chains are pretty tight, but just try and go into the front loop of that chain and do 1/2 double crochet. Then do 1 into the front loop of the next stitch and the next, and just keep doing that all the way along, and that is creating a little border. So I have finished working that all the way along, and then when I got to the very end, in the very last stitch, instead of just going through the front loop, I decided to go through both loops just to make it a little bit more secure, so you can do that if you want to. And there we have finished the top of the front, and now we can fasten off, leaving a tail to weave in later. So you want to fasten off, so we are not adding our straps to the front, our straps are attached to the back. So there we have finished the top of the front, and now we can move on to the back. So to start the back, you want to turn your work over and lay it flat. So you want to lay your work flat so that the back is facing you here, and then you have the seam in the center and the legs are all laid nice and flat. And we are going to go to the right hand side, and you want to count in 7 stitches from the last stitch that was worked into on the front. So you can see that this stitch here has been worked into for the front. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, and you want to insert your hook into that 7th stitch. So I'll show you that again. You want to count in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you can see I have already inserted my hook into that stitch, and we're going to attach our yarn into this stitch. So the 7th stitch on the right hand side from the last stitch that was worked into for the front. So attach your yarn into that stitch and chain 1. And now we can move on to round 1 of the top of the back. So the top of the back of our romper is very, very similar to the top or the front. So we did 10 rounds for the top of the front, and you want to do all of those 10 rounds again for the top of the back. The only difference is on the back we do not have any buttonholes. So in rounds 7 and 9, with the front, we added in some buttonholes on either side, and for the back you do not want to do that. So instead of doing chain 1 and skip 1 stitch twice in each of those rounds to create the buttonholes, you just want to do 1 double crochet into each stitch. So I'll go over that again. The top of the back is exactly the same as the top of the front. So you want to go back in the video and rewatch all of those rounds again and just repeat them for the back. So what that will look like is rounds 1, 2 and 3 are going to be exactly the same with the 2 double crochets together, double crochets, 2 double crochets together. And then rounds 4 through to 9 are just going to be rounds of plain double crochet. So 1 double crochet into each stitch, and there should be 43 in each round. And then round 10 is exactly the same as the front again with the border. So you just want to repeat the front, but then in these rounds do not do the buttonholes. So we're going to move on to round 1, and we're starting off with 2 double crochets together. So you want to go into that stitch you just attached your yarn into, and the next, and do 2 double crochets together, and then just continue to repeat the front. So I have finished working all of those rounds for the top of the back of the romper or the dungarees. So I did 10 rounds, and like I said, the only difference between the front and the back is that in the back you do not work the buttonhole, so you just work rounds of plain double crochet without the holes on the side. So I finished off working round 10, which was our little border round, and then we have finished the back of the romper, the top of the back. And now the very last thing that we need to do is work our straps and add our buttons. So we have a strap on either side, and I have made my straps 7 stitches wide, and you need to do the same amount of stitches as I did to make sure that your buttons line up with your buttonholes. So you need to make sure that your straps are 7 stitches wide. So do not fasten off at the end of your last round, and then for round 1 of the first strap, chain 1 and turn and work 1 double crochet into each of the first 7 stitches. And there we have round 1 finished. And then for the rest of the straps, you just want to work rounds of plain double crochet. So chain 1 and turn and do 1 double crochet into each stitch. And you can do as many rounds as you like, so you can make your straps however long you want them to be. But I did 14 rounds in total for mine. And then when you get to the end of the last round, fasten off. So pull your yarn out and your hook and cut your yarn, leaving a tail to weave in later. And there we will have finished our first strap. So this is what our straps look like. They come from the back, across, over, and they go underneath the front, and then we have our buttons attached to the strap, and then the buttons come through and go through the buttonholes on the front. So then once you have done that first strap, you want to make the second one in the exact same way. So we will be making this left one here, and what I did just to make sure it's really neat is I just attached my yarn into the 7th stitch from the side here, and then I worked 7 double crochets, and that way we have the right side on the first round of both first rounds of the strap, but you could just attach it in the end if that doesn't bother you. But I attached mine 7 stitches in, worked 1 double crochet into each of those stitches, and then I just kept working rounds of plain double crochet, so chain 1 and turn, and then 1 double crochet into each stitch until I had the same length as the other one, and then I fastened off. And then once you have your straps, you want to go ahead and attach your buttons to them. So let me show you on this one here. Here we have our buttonholes on the front, and you want to attach your buttons onto this edge here, so on the outside. And as I did 14 rounds, I attached my buttons into the 11th round and the 13th round, so I have one round in between them, and you want to attach them into the third double crochet of the round, so right in the middle. So this first one is attached into the third double crochet of the 11th round, and this one's attached into the third double crochet of the 13th round. So then the straps come like this underneath the front and they go through the buttonholes, and you need to use pretty big buttons so that they fit nicely and securely inside the buttonholes. And then once you have done that on both sides, you want to finish off by weaving all of your ends into the inside of your romper or your dungarees. You can see I haven't done that quite yet. So you want to finish off by weaving all of your ends in nice and securely. And then the very last thing that you need to do is sew together this little gap. So just using a piece of yarn and a yarn needle when you're sewing your ends in, just go ahead and use another piece of yarn and sew this little gap together. And there we have finished. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it easy to follow. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. And in the description box below this video, I will leave a link to where you can find the written pattern, and I will also leave links in the description box to my Instagram and Twitter accounts. So I always like to post updates and pictures on there, especially Instagram, and I would love to see photos of your crochet work on there as well. And thank you again for watching. Bye!